Hello everyone. Some sad story written by Bharat, aka myself. Dear PDF lovers, find the link in the description and have fun. Chapter 1. Busy Morning. What can one do with two hands? Make intricate pottery out of clay if creativity is on her side, or make broken pieces out of a pot if clumsiness refuses to hide. What if the one's two hands are bushwhacked in three directions simultaneously by forces not for the purpose of a high five? The services of pages ever capable but currently trained hands were in roaring demand. The beautiful morning, which was as usual busy, pushed their demands above her desires. Breakfast was taking shape in the utensils, while her kid shouted, "Where is my pencil?" Looking at the long line of loud complaints, she wished she were a fossil. "This coffee has no sugar!" Her husband presented his share of clamor with a voice filled with vigor. He was lost in a cup of coffee and second-hand newspaper which was cheaper. Her father was coming up with amusing words to mock whatever she cooked. What was a simple task to the undiscerning eye was actually a series of hard hoops to hop through, starting with persuading her husband to quit sipping and start showering, and then finding the lost pencil of the loud child whose shoes needed special handy attention, followed by serving breakfast too and packing lunch for the child and the man-child to somehow send them off if humanly possible. She could perhaps take a bite or two before slipping into something that would neither turn heads nor torture eyes and leaving for work. What a busy routine whose stressful rush and lack of lush can put a drill sergeant to shame! He couldn't be bothered by Paige's look full of glamour or the lack thereof. The clock face wasn't a cot of comfort either, as it showed 8 a.m. There wasn't more than an hour to get ready and step outside to get the day started, but her husband was barely moving, barely willing to move. Paige's frustration blended into suspicion as she wandered closer to him and wondered what he was doing for so long. "Are you sipping the newspaper and reading the cup?" she asked after seeing the cup was still full. "Maybe I am," he replied with his eyes on the paper and gaze on the pretty wife. "Don't mind me asking, why?" She begged for an answer because of the rush. "There isn't one solid piece of news. I might as well sip. As far as coffee is concerned, it sucks. Why should I sip?" Paige tied a convoluted knot in her tongue and maintained silence. A reply to his rudeness would receive another level of harshness to which she'd deliver a color of craziness which would only nudge the needles of time faster towards a dead end. Admitting defeat to send him off to shower was the age-old wife's plan she used. "Honey, the time is—" Another voice was heard before she could finish. "Mommy, where's my watch?" The kid's voice was hearing's kryptonite. Eardrums hung and ended themselves when the kid started talking. Paige wasn't aware of where the kid or its watch was. Like a mouse that follows fragrance and finds the bait, she followed the kid's echo and found him laying low. "I got you a cute watch, but you shout from wherever you are without moving an inch, just like your father!" With raised heels and hinged toes, she searched the top shelf her eyes couldn't reach but hands could. Something got caught between her fingers, felt plastic, lightweight, and small. It was the watch she was looking for. She felt relieved and dragged the watch out, but that was when— "Paige, you didn't turn the geyser on? Water's freezing cold!" Poor Paige's moment of discovering the watch didn't last. And soon enough, the watch didn't last as well, because her balance didn't last. She tripped in shock and the watch fell down. Her peace wasn't lost after sighting her kid's reaction to the broken pieces. On the other side, the husband was awaiting an answer for his grievance, and on top was the clock reminding her to speed things up. Then, "Paige! Paige! What are you blinking at?" She immediately blinked twice, then thrice to absorb the situation. The child was missing. The husband's voice was gone. The watch was nowhere. So were the broken pieces. Uttering a discontented sigh, she woke up from her daydream reluctantly. This was nothing new for the pretty 22-year-old youngster. Dreams in which she was a married mother with a quaint, dysfunctional family of her own were abundant in nights and mornings. Her dream that Wednesday was getting herself and everyone else ready, though it was the dream that kept her from getting ready. She never blamed her daydreaming. Those fictional episodes of being married highlighted her ultimate desire for life. Marriage was the mirage she would merely mourn for. "Paige! God, I have to throw a spider on your face to ruin your daytime slumber!" He shook her shoulders wildly to induce a jolt and reduce her dreaminess. "Dad? Dad? What are you doing here?" she asked like a tipsy and unaware drunken damsel.
What am I doing here? In my house? Lovely. A wise man said, beget a boy and bitch forever, beget a daughter and be ditched forever. Ain't that accurate?
He facepalmed himself hilariously. "Dad, I'm so sorry, so sorry. I was lost somewhere in some thoughts and didn't notice. Don't take it personally." She pinched his chin adorably. The touch on the chin reminded him of something and he rushed to the mirror in the hall. Retired, yet possessed the round face of a youngster, aged 60, yet lacked the wrinkles of an oldie. His eyes were exuberant with sprinkled youth, rivaled by his cheeks that flashed dimples when he smiled, and a mole sat right where the dimples stood. Above all, his eyes showed the pride of having worked till the age of 60 and successfully retired. If he were that pleasant to the eyes at a ripe age, it could be imagined that he must have been Cupid's own clone in the past. There was just one problem: the onset of baldness. Hairline means lifeline in the minds of men. They can endure walking even 1,000,000 miles but can't stand for a second the sight of a bad hairstyle. For this reason, as often as possible, Gary checked out the mirror to check himself out to keep in check his thinning hairline. "Dad, enough. You look like my brother. Happy?"
Don't know if that's the truth or an outlier. The guy from the grocery store calls me uncle. Still you insist we gotta buy from that very store.
"So what? Call him Grandpa in response." She smiled.
Call a 25-year-old a grandpa? Superb! I didn't even ask, but you're teaching me ways to be considered mental. Grocery store is one of the few places, actually the only place where I'm respected.
"Reminds me, did the store deliver properly? Was our address easy for the store to find?"
Only 2 or 3 houses in this entire area. That too far away. Ours is the biggest of 'em all. No issues since we moved here 6 months ago."
He rubbed his stubble followed by his stomach in mysterious ways. "Got it, Dad. Got it. Your indicator for hunger is a thing of beauty. Here you go." She placed the cereal bowl on the table and saw the newspaper lying in the corner. It was 8:30 a.m. Still a solid half hour was left before rushing would become essential. Though reading the newspaper wasn't a part of her routine, it had a special place in her heart because of the space it took in her daydreams. Whenever she got lost in her imaginary dreams, her imaginary husband would be lost in the newspaper and a cup of coffee releasing fresh hot vapor. Just like how he never read the paper or drank the coffee in those dreams, Paige hardly touched the paper and relinquished coffee in real life. Despite loving both very much, she picked up the Times and read a question from the Creative Corner, a page dedicated to common folk which included art, jokes, stories, and more. "Dad, give examples for a great sacrifice and a grave sacrifice."
Lending ear to your question is a great sacrifice. Pausing while eating and answering your question is a grave sacrifice.
"Stop playing around! Answer me!"
All right, I'll give a serious reply. Eating your mother's cooking was a great sacrifice. Marrying her after knowing her cooking skills was a grave sacrifice.
He laughed like a fool left to himself. Paige couldn't be happier that he didn't mock her cookery, and before she could express that, Gary said,
I'll ask you a question now. Answer it.
"What idiocy is he going to ask in the name of a question? Did I start the wrong game unaware of what I was getting myself into?" She mumbled internally without a visible sign on the outside.
What was that?
He asked, as if he heard something, but she shrugged his doubt off and asked him to proceed with his question. "Ask away."
Please don't.
"Dad?"
What is a small lie? What is a sinister lie?
He asked after swallowing a mouthful of cereal. Paige knew it was her golden chance to zip his mouth for good. "Saying my dad is young is a small lie. Saying he has a head full of hair is a sinister lie." Having been mocked in dreams to the extent of memes, and in real life to the point of preferring the afterlife, she sought the opportunity to deliver a game-changing mockery, since she knew her father hated being made fun of for his hair. She hung her head down and laughed with hiccups upon looking at how burnt and toasted his face looked. Smoke was all that was missing. He replied, Calling bullets of metal as grains of rice is a small lie, whereas feeding me the same and telling everyone that you take good care of me is a sinister lie. He cracked up and pointed out how the mocking privilege went both ways and that he was better. "Everything's a game for you."
Your mother used to say she was a rock I could lean on. Marrying her was similar to a rock smashing my head. Her food wasn't any different from tasteless rock. The phrase, between a rock and hard place, has been so true for me.
3 flies more or less always hovered in the meadows of Gary's mind. First was his incipient baldness, second was his late wife Rhonda, and third was her unforgettable cooking. More than the pride of retiring after working in the same job for 3 decades, unlike money-minded monkeys who hopped across branches, was the impact of Rhonda's kitchen work. Having survived the merciless assault of her food on his tongue was a bigger feat in his book than buying a house. It was considered better for Gary to poke fun at something like that, otherwise Paige would be in danger. Yes, if Gary started talking about how handsome and irresistible he used to be in the times past, who would be able to listen? Paige could handle his buffoonery over bragging any day. 8:40 a.m. was the time. Keep poking fun. I better leave for school before I fall victim to another instance of broken humor. Had to take leave yesterday and the day before due to that conference. Gotta reach in time today.
Paige, wait!
Gary raised his hand and interrupted her. Now what? Need more milk for the cereal?
Lovely!
He grumbled. I don't get it.
I didn't get any.
What do you mean?
Milk. I didn't get any. Any at all.
What? What? I didn't pour milk into the cereal?
Would you like to test my taste buds or tear open my tummy to verify?
All this while you were eating just cereal with no milk?
I'm not heartless to lie. The cereal didn't fully lack wetness.
Oh, so there was
water. You poured water instead of milk and I ate without complaining. Can I get an award here?
Water? That's what you were having cereal with? I'm really sorry, Dad.
The watery, milk-free cereal didn't hurt as much as your looking at my reluctant face and regretful swallowing and not noticing a thing.
My focus was elsewhere. I was thinking about something. Please don't mind. I'll get your milk right away.
Don't act too upset. I know you will turn this mistake of yours to your favor.
Huh? I don't get it.
I meant you'll tell your friends that you forgot the milk because there wasn't any. If they ask why there wasn't any, you'll say that your father left home to buy some milk and never came back.
His tongue wasn't at a loss for jokes, even at the pinnacle of being butchered by breakfast. Sadly, Paige's ears weren't equipped with immunity to survive her dad's corny dad jokes. Stop playing around! Let me get your milk! She brought a fresh carton of milk from the kitchen and handed it to her father, with shyness in the face and shivering in the hands. His mockery was annoying as is. Messing things up like that would offer his penchant for mockery a world of chances. Praying to God that he shouldn't initiate another array of irritating taunts, she slowly asked why he asked her to wait.
Ah, yes. I wanted to make sure you took the school books, that laptop which you asked me to remind you about, and not romance novels by mistake.
Stop playing around! No romance novels in my bag.
Someone's been daydreaming at a different level today.
Nope, nothing like that. I disagree.
What you teach at school is math, though all your calculations are about Steve. He's the center of all your thoughts and you're always eager to connect the dots. Am I right or too right?
Cut it out! It's been 2 days since we talked and he hasn't even called, so I didn't meet him when I went to his city. I got mad. Paige was a college graduate with a degree in education and landed a job as a schoolteacher. Pursuing self-sufficiency was in her itinerary, but her dad intervened with what she regarded as a detour as well as delight. He bought a new house. At last! She was definitely looking forward to finding a new apartment, her own trampoline to jump high to the glass ceiling. At the same time, her calculative mind couldn't help but compute the costs that could be cut by operating from his home, while also lending a helpful hand to him, the single parent who could use some company.
Superb!
Huh? For what?
I got punished for him not calling you. Ain't that lovely?
Gary exclaimed as he washed and wiped his hands clean following breakfast. What are you saying? She asked like a baby with raised eyebrows and swollen cheeks.
I've no words for your act. 2 days of frustration without calls from Steve has led to my milkless cereal, a new pet peeve. That's what I meant.
Dad, you cheat nowadays.
How?
Making fun of Mum used to be your only habit. Oftentimes these days you include me too. The cereal I gave may have been dry, but my heart isn't.
Send that to Steve. He won't look in your direction for a century.
The name Steve inevitably brought a blossom to Paige's face every time, an indescribable glow-up, an instant climb to inhuman shine, a shift from darkness to drumbeat in a second. She naturally was beautiful without the need for a triggered facial bloom. A round face like the moon, hair extending down to the waist, fluffy and feathery eyebrows overseeing big welcoming prominent eyes, and fairness covering the fabric of skin. Steve wasn't deviant from her appearance. In fact, it's appropriate to say their features were almost alike. Be it skin tone, structure of the facial bone, and prominence of eyebrows, their faces were a close match. A perfect match! Except for hair length and subtle features emphasizing gender dimorphism, they were virtually identical. Such was the similarity and perhaps the cause of their mutual attraction and passionate bond. Steve was reminded of Paige whenever he looked in the mirror, but the same couldn't be said about Paige because she never got the chance to stand before the mirror. That position was a patented right of Gary, owing to his woes about falling hair which he could not bear to possess even before his only heir. He adored his daughter and had no objections towards her love life or personal life. He neither denied nor disliked, neither opposed nor forced, and only spoke in favor of her relationship. It could be surmised from his alluring appearance that he had a blast watching and matching with birdies in his younger years. All were cordial between the two, but for a lone longing.
I've never seen Steve. Where's he hidden? Stop playing around! Keep saying that but never answer my questions.
He scratched his crystal clear scalp and scoffed not so loudly. Hailing from traditional family ethics, he had his doubts that Paige was insecure about proceeding to a more serious level in her relationship, and hence he loudly mouthed his acceptance whenever he got the chance. "Dad, you know everything. Why do you ask?"
Consider it a fan request and repeat it. Saying the same thing multiple times solidifies its credibility. Plus, I need some time pass, don't I?
She didn't want to roll the same worn-out record like an unattended gramophone. However, why would a woman who perpetually thinks about a certain man hesitate to talk about that same man? The conflict of thoughts lasted no further than a trivial itch, and she began narrating. "Steve and I met in college. We were close friends for the first 2 years. The third and final year saw a murky kind of intimacy develop between us, and we eventually fell in love. We spoke for hours, exchanged flowers, and took selfies at the top of towers. He got a job in a freaking bank and returned to his hometown, whereas I became a teacher and got stuck here." Gary, who was listening and nodding his head to every line spoken by Paige, walked over to her vicinity with a face filled with intensity to set whatever sounded crooked in his ears straight.
He got a job in a freaking bank? A freaking bank? You think a bank job is that unimportant? I too worked and retired from a bank. That's how I raised you. It is by working in a bank that I bought this palace of a house. It is from that job that I acquired all assets.
Dad,
shush! Owning a home was my lifelong ambition. Our family, which had been renting a place for decades, finally resides in a palace of a place because of my bank job. Many opined that this area was underdeveloped and unsafe. Just attempts of jealous juggernauts who like to wreck everything in sight. I paid no attention. I didn't care. My ambition was more important than their sinister contention. That's why I stayed stubborn, stuck to my guts, trusted my instinct, and went through with the purchase to become the owner of this house. The biggest in all of Everton Village. Say with me, the biggest in all of Everton Village.
Dad.
The mighty reason behind these massive achievements of mine was that freaking bank job. Understand its unspoken salience?
Dad.
What?
Done talking?
Why ask?
When did I blame his bank job for anything?
The what?
When did I blame his bank job for anything? Did I call the job inferior? Did I indirectly insult by a poor word choice? If I did, I'm really sorry, my dear pair of ears. She humorously hinted at how unnecessary his eye-opening speech was, and he was stunned by her response, making him want to apologize to his mouth for exerting to exhaustion. He became quiet. His doubtful belief that she found Steve's job to be of subpar caliber and therefore didn't bring him to their house and make a move to make the relationship official persuaded him to give a sleep-inducing speech which was shut down by Paige with a single line. He decided silence was a better option and asked her to share the problem. "There isn't any."
"Don't be silly. I can read it on your face."
"Really nothing, Dad."
"Nope. Come on. Talk!"
"That's the problem. Talk!"
"Talk? I'm asking you to talk and you're telling me to talk? I don't know what your problem is with your boyfriend, but we have some serious communication problems. What do you mean?"
"Dad, our problem is related to talk."
"I understand exactly none of it."
"Great. The end."
"Elaborate, or I'll start mocking your cooking."
"Fine, fine. Our friendship and love of 4 years in college have now turned into long distance. If phone signal is the cop who regulates traffic in our relationship, how can we be at peace? We talk like the Earth and its satellites. Signal, perspective, line of sight, and other crazy parameters, they all matter. So much gap, too much interruption, lots of waiting, and thoughts of quitting dating. Been only a year since we started working. How can we spend bucks to meet often? Talking is our problem because we can't. Listing the disadvantages her situation subjected her to, she exhaled whatever she inhaled deeply, but her father wasn't moved by the speech. He didn't seem flustered by the talk about how talking was the primary problem. He was tapping his thighs without losing the rhythm and the smile on his face in response to her words. He stood up and sent fear into her heart, the fear that he might instigate another lengthy speech and put her wakefulness to rest. She neither had the patience to pay attention, nor the sense to make any sense of the upcoming narration.
Your love is just messages and calls?
Yes, Dad.
Love used to be damsel behind the castle walls. Now it's just text messages and calls? The modern trend is messy. There were once messenger doves, private booths, walks in the parks, and now there are pesky texts and faceless voices.
It's my fate. Yours is baldness. I hope mine's alright.
Can't live a breathing minute without ridiculing my hair, can you? I'll forgive and share some magical insight. Willing to hear?
Magical? That too from you? I have no faith, but you can prove me wrong.
I'll forgive you again and again and unfailingly share. You're wrong if you think a few sharp replies can hold my tongue.
It's not like Paige wasn't aware of her dad's inclination to talk and keep talking. Still, it was no rule that she had to endure without experimenting with tactics, though none ever worked. This was her 45th attempt to fail at soothing his urge to speak. She listened with a sigh.
Paige, your long-distance love is a blessing.
What nonsense! Didn't you even hear my blood-curdling oration, Dad?
Not nonsense. There is a benefit, a divine convenience in your relationship that your infancy and maturity stops you from realizing. Aren't you too daydreamy to open your eyes? That's what I'm here for.
Whatever, say it fast! Gary clapped his hands like dusting them off and walked across the cushioned chair next to her and sat on the old-fashioned wooden chair near the couch in the hall with his legs crossed, giving the impression he was about to unveil wisdom unknown to the global population.
The two of you aren't close. That's your problem, isn't it? Actually, the real problem is misreading a prize as a problem and worrying about the problem which doesn't exist. What does exist is a prize in the place of a problem which was never there.
Dad, I admit, you're handsome with a way with words, okay? Will you please not waste my time and tell me already? She scratched her hair wildly and audibly to sound past miles.
I'll tell you, my dear. It is a pleasure to love without seeing one's face.
How? She asked angrily. Her face and voice weren't deficient in rage and redness, but Gary wasn't going to be startled by expressions and ear-splitting voices.
Hear me spell out the phases of love. Prior to marriage, there's desire to see her face. Following marriage, she bears resemblance to Scarface. A few years later, one seeks security from her and help. Years further down the line, her sight makes one not well. At that point, he can jump into a well or call the devil since he has a soul to sell. Isn't your situation a boon? There's a plus in everything. Seeking that plus and not making a fuss is the way to live.
Good thing she not only listened to his advice about faces, but also looked at the clock face on the wall. The hand was approaching 9. Realizing it was time to leave for Aspen High School, she left her dad's advice hanging without a reply and barged to the door. Dad, as you know, it's a deserted area, little to no houses around, nobody to hear or answer your screams. I'm locking the door outside as usual. The spare key is inside the locker. Stay safe! Also, let me know if Max calls.